open our eyes tonight. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen. So I think there should be notes under all of your chairs. My wife can tell you, if you don't write it down, you're probably going to forget. Because I'm definitely like that. If I don't write something down, I'm going to forget it. So take advantage of these notes. Not everything I say is going to be on there. And I encourage you, if the Lord speaks to you specifically in a certain way, write it down. Because he can speak in so many different ways. So if he says something to you now, or you feel impressing something on your heart, write it down so you don't forget it. Not just what I have on the notes there. Whatever you feel like he's saying. So we're going to jump right into it. I think it's in your notes too. John chapter 17, verse 4. We're going to jump right into what Jesus says about exalting the Father. John chapter 17, verse 4. I'll turn there with you. I think it's also in your notes if you don't have the Bible with you. John 17, verse 4. He says this. Well, before I get into what he says, this is the last day of his life before he dies. Jesus just ate the Last Supper in a room with his best friends. He knows already that he's going to be crucified the next day. And what does he do? Does he go spend it selfishly on himself? No, he goes up into the mountain and he begins to pray. And he starts praying to his Father for his friends. He starts praying for all future believers that ever believe in him. He's praying for you on the day before he dies. I think that's just incredible just to think about right there. But he says, as he's praying, talking to his Father, he says, I glorified you on earth, or I exalted you on earth, or I lifted your name higher than every name, or I made your name famous on earth. Now how did he do this? How did he exalt the Father? Having accomplished the work that you gave me to do. So he's saying, Father, I have lifted your name high, or I've made your name famous, or I've exalted you, glorified you by doing what you told me to do, by accomplishing the work that you have given me, by fulfilling the purpose that you have given me. So now if we take this and we try to apply it to our life, what does it ask us? What is it saying to us? And the first thing in your notes, it says this. Exalting the Father, from what we just saw right here with Jesus, is to live out the purpose for which we are created. Live out the purpose for which he has created you and he has created me. Now, I think that's the age-old question, isn't it? What's my purpose? Why am I here for? What did God allow me to come into this earth for? I don't know what I'm here for. I mean, I believe that's the age-old question. I've asked it, and I could assume that you probably have too, probably multiple times. What is my purpose? Now, I really believe that we cannot understand our purpose until we understand where we came from. Where did we come from? And we have to first go there before we can wrap our small minds around our purpose. Now, my first blanket says, live out the purpose for which he created us. Guys, you were created. You were created by a loving Father. You were known before the foundations of the earth were put together. He knew who you were, and he specifically gave you desires and gifts and talents specific to you in this time in which you're living. He created you for a purpose, to do something. And I'm going to try my best tonight to unpack what that means and what he created us for. But you were created with a purpose. You were created with a purpose. Now, I was created with a purpose. Now, here's what I think. And if I could boil it down, I know that this is a broad word and it's even hard to define. But I believe that we were created to worship God. We were created to worship God. And now before you write me off because I'm throwing out churchy words like worship, just hang in there with me. Hang in there with me. It's a hard word to define, but what I'm going to try to do, I'm going to kind of say what it's not and go through a little bit what it's not. And then I'm going to go and switch it and say, this is what I believe Jesus says worship is. So I'm going to kind of go deeper and deeper and deeper into it. By the end, I'm going to try to tie everything together, bring it full circle. So just stay with me as we go deeper into what God has for you. and he has for all of us in his intentions and his grand design of creating you and of creating me. We were created to worship God. Now, I believe, and I really think it's important to hit on these first. I came up with 4 misconceptions of what worship is. I'm sure there's hundreds, thousands probably. 4 misconceptions of what worship is. And these aren't in your notes, but feel free to write these down. Number 1, first misconception is that not everybody's a worshiper. That's for Christians. Or that's not even for Christians, that's for really spiritual Christians. That's a big misconception. I want to tell you tonight that everybody ever created is a worshiper. It was written on the DNA of our souls to worship. We were created to worship. Now, not all the time do we choose to worship God. We will fill it with worshiping other things. And if you don't believe me, next fall, take $150 out of your pocket or from your mom or your dad. Go to a Colts game and just see that it was designed for humans to worship something. You go into Lucas Oil Stadium, you'll see people with their hands raised, screaming, pumping their fists. Why? I love the Colts. Nothing against the Colts. Why? Because we were designed to worship. If not the Colts, something else. We were designed and created to be a part and want to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. We reach out to be a fan of this or a fan of this, or to tell stories about how this happened and I was there. We desire, we crave to be a part of something bigger than ourselves. Why? Because you were created that way. You were simply created that way, and that's awesome. Everybody is a worshiper. Everybody is created that way. Misconception number 2. Misconception number 2. Worship is boring. I think that's an oxymoron, by the way. Worship is boring. I think that's one of the biggest oxymorons, because think about it. Just think in your own life. What is something that you are passionate about? What's something that you love? Is it a TV show? Is it a game? Is it your girlfriend? What is it that you love that you can't stop talking about? And when somebody brings it up, you want to come over here and join that conversation. Whatever it is that you worship, I promise you it is not boring to you. Worship is not boring. What somebody else worships, it might be boring to you, but what you worship is not boring to you. You love it. You have desires. You have affections. You were made to worship. Worship is not boring. Misconception is that worship is boring. Now, misconception number 3, I'm just going to throw this out there. I'm not even going to explain it. I just wanted to put it in there. It's not the Bible. I think it's true. Worship is not just singing songs and when a band plays at a church service. Just throwing it out there. I want to say that. That is part of worship, and we'll get into that. But that's not, we somehow as a church in America have defined worship. The time is the time of the service when the band comes up and we play and we sing. That's a part of worship. That's not all of worship. Worship is huge. And the last misconception, I think, is the biggest misconception of all, is that worship is about you. Worship is about you. Now imagine if, spring break's coming up, you and a couple of your buddies, or you and a couple of your girlfriends, you get in your car, and you're about to take off on a road trip. I love road trips, so that's why I wanted to talk about this. We're going on a road trip. We're driving. We're going down Indiana into Illinois. Then from Illinois, we're going maybe into Missouri, down into Texas, because I love Texas. I lived in Texas. Shout out to Texas. Now, you keep on going through Texas. We want to stay there, but we're not going to. We're going to keep on road tripping through New Mexico, maybe through Colorado, seeing the mountains, and then we pull into Arizona. We're going to go see the Grand Canyon. I've never seen the Grand Canyon. I've always wanted to. But everybody in the car with us, we haven't seen the Grand Canyon. We're pumped. We're anticipating this. We're getting excited. We're talking about it. We have our cameras ready. We have our other camera ready with our iPhone. We have both cameras. We're good to go. We drive in. We pull into the parking lot. I don't know what that looks like. I'm assuming there's a parking lot at the Grand Canyon somewhere. So we pull into the parking lot. We get out. We have our cameras that are around our necks now because we're getting ready. And we walk over to the edge of the Grand Canyon. And then right as we look out and when we're raising our arms, before we can have our first thought, we see this guy next to us right over here, screaming at the top of his lungs, "Look at me! Look how awesome I am! Look how awesome I am! Just look